what we will hear and see today, these are the stories I think about when people are so disparaging of the work we do or the teachers that have made a difference in our lives, the heart connection, the soul connection, the opening up opportunities. And this today is a celebration in that same kind of way. It's an opportunity for some really accomplished people, very special people, to say thanks to the public school teachers who made a difference in their lives, and in that way, also saying thanks collectively, not only to all of you in this room, but to all 3 million teachers who every single day in America try to make a difference in the lives of our children. And tonight's event will be moderated by Bob McCartney. Now, Mr. McCartney, and I've had the pleasure or opportunity to be on the opposite side of a phone when he's interviewing you. He's one amazing reporter. He is a longtime journalist with the Washington Post, and he's a commentator on WAMU Radio, Washington's public radio station. In his 31 years at the Post, Bob has been a foreign correspondent in Latin America and in Europe during the fall of communism. He's also covered Wall Street in New York City, and as the Post Metro editor, he oversaw the coverage of the 2007 Virginia Tech shooting, for which the staff at the Post received a Pulitzer Prize. When we asked him to moderate this event this evening, he said, and when we told him it was about honoring the incredible work of teachers, he said, and I quote, "That's easy. How could you be against that?" And so it is my pleasure to turn over this evening's moderating expertise to Bob McCartney.
Thank you, Randy.
Thanks.
Good.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Randy, for that nice introduction. I know you don't want to hear about teachers that made a difference in my life. You want to hear about the teachers that made a difference in the life of newscaster Ed Schultz and opera singer Denise Graves and actor Tony Danza, and that's who you're going to hear from tonight. But listening to them talk beforehand as I was preparing for this gig, I couldn't help thinking about some of the teachers that did make a difference in my life. So if you'll bear with me just briefly, I went to public schools in Montgomery County, Maryland. My son went to public schools in Montgomery County, Maryland. My wife went to public schools in Montgomery County, Maryland, and she now works as a paraeducator at Somerset Elementary School in Chevy Chase, Maryland. I also had a sort of a side trip and went to public schools also on the North Shore of Chicago and Evanston, Illinois, and Wilmette, Illinois. So we have some Illinoisans here. And I want to talk about very briefly just about 3 high school teachers, especially at Bethesda Chevy Chase High School, who really made a difference to me. One was U.S. history teacher, Miss Lynch. And Miss Lynch really gave me an abiding love of U.S. history, which continues to this day. But she really wanted us to relate history to current events. And so she had us read the newspaper. She actually brought newspapers in, and we read them, had to read them every day. She taught us how to read the newspaper. Like she said, you don't have to read the whole article. If you just read the first few paragraphs, that'll usually give you the basic idea. She taught us about the difference between the news pages and the editorial pages, and gave us regular news quizzes. And that really did introduce me to journalism for the first time. So she had a big impact there. And then Mrs. Kitsis, my French teacher, she was the tough teacher. She was the real hard liner. In Mrs. Kitsis's class, if you were caught chewing gum or yawning, you had to pay a nickel. and they put the nickel in the jar, and they saved up all the nickels, and at the end of the year, we had a party. Also, if you hadn't done your homework, you had to pay it. If you couldn't, if it was clear you hadn't done your homework, you'd have to pay a nickel, as well as other punishments. She made you, like, to learn the verbs in French, which is hard. She made you write out in a book, keep a little notebook, a verb notebook, where you wrote out every conjugation of every verb. And it was really hard. It was so annoying, and other teachers didn't make you do that. But I really learned French. I learned French well. And more importantly, I learned how to learn languages well. And I put that to good use because I later used those same techniques to learn Spanish, Italian, and German. So most of which I've now forgotten, but they got me through, a number of assignments when I was overseas. So thanks to Mrs. Kitsis for that. And then finally, Mr. Barrett, my English teacher, he was the first one who really sort of gave me specific advice about how to write. And I remember I wrote the first paper I handed in, he said, your sentences tend to be too long. So the next one I handed in, he says, these sentences are way too short. I think you're overreacting to what I said the first time. And so then the next one, he says, this is a good mix of long and short sentences. This is just right. And it was like the Goldilocks approach to writing. But more importantly, I would tend to write these sort of cerebral, sort of intellectual, literary things. And he says, quit doing that. Just write what you feel, write what you think personally about stuff. And that's been very useful since I became a columnist and am trying to write my opinions and put my opinions in the paper after 27 years when they paid me to keep my opinions out of the paper. So that was thanks to Mr. Barrett for that. So those are some teachers who made a difference in my life, and I really appreciate what they did. Now, let's move on to the people you really came to hear, and that we're starting with Ed Schultz. Ed Schultz, we all know as the working person's most vociferous advocate on television and radio. Mr. Schultz's reputation obviously precedes him. He is the host, Ed Schultz is the host of MSNBC's The Ed Show. It doesn't even need his last name, just The Ed Show. It airs Saturdays and Sundays at 5 p.m. Eastern. And he also has a radio show, syndicated radio show nationwide from noon to 3 p.m. He was born in Norfolk, Virginia. He graduated from Norfolk's Maury High School in 1972. So he's a year younger than I am. He had a very interesting career path. He went to Minnesota to play college football. He was the quarterback. He was an All-American Division II quarterback in Minnesota, and then later played Canadian Football League football. Then he didn't make it with the Raiders, but he became a sportscaster for radio and TV stations in North Dakota. Whoa. Enthusiastic North Dakotans. Then in the 1990s, he expanded beyond sports and became a political commentator. In 2003, the Ed Schultz radio show became syndicated on stations throughout the United States. Now, something that's really interesting about Ed Schultz, and I want to talk to him about this when I talk to him, is his political views changed during that period. He started out rather conservative and became progressive over time, so we want to hear about that. In 2009, he became the host of MSNBC's The Ed Show. He is an outspoken, avowed political progressive, a good friend and advocate of unions, teachers, and other working people. Ladies and gentlemen, Ed Schultz.
Thank you. Thank you. How are you? Bob, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Where are those people from North Dakota yelling? Don't ask me if I like the bison or the Sioux. I like them both. Long story there, folks.
Well, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here, Bob. Thank you.
You can tell from what you said in the video that you obviously feel very strongly about Maury High School and the difference it made to you. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the impact was of your attendance there?
Well, I think I was a typical high school kid. You know, you don't consume everything around you until you leave and you realize, hey, I went through that. Yeah, I remember that. You know, when we're 14 to 18 years old, we have all the answers and we don't let anybody tell us that we don't. But I went to Maury High School in a very interesting time in American history. The Vietnam War was raging. We were all looking at, see if we were going to draw that number to get drafted. And there was a lot of fear. Forced busing for racial equality, the mixing of white and black athletes, can they be successful in the field? And that became a real focal point for Maury High School because we had so much success. But in the classroom, the conversation I felt was very aggressive because there was a tremendous amount of pride at Maury High School. That Maury was one of the model schools in the state of Virginia that was going to make integration work, that was excited to accept the challenge. And there was a real enthusiastic bounce in everybody's step. And it was an exciting time, and it was a time that was challenging. And I look back on it, and I see those experiences and the influence that it had on me, and I didn't realize how it was shaping me at the time. And so, Mr. Armstrong, of course, my father was an aeronautical engineer. He worked at Norfolk Naval Air Station. He, of course, was in World War II, and I had a tremendous interest in history. So I was paying more attention in government class with Mr. Armstrong than I did anybody else. And I remember he didn't like Congress back then either, but but he was an outspoken man with a tremendous amount of enthusiasm, and he grabbed me in the classroom. The way he spoke, the way he presented his material. And I had an interest in government and back then, and in history. And so it was very interesting to see all the socioeconomic things that were taking place in impressionable years in my life. Maury High School at the time was in a neighborhood called Ghent, which was a rough part of town. It had not gotten the resources. It was a poor neighborhood. It was getting run down. And since then, of course, the Norfolk Redevelopment and Housing Authority has put forward a big reclamation project in that neighborhood, and you wouldn't recognize it today when I went to school and what Maury and the surrounding area looks like today, which is a real credit to the community. But we had forced busing for racial equality.
Yeah, talk a little bit about what role the teachers played in the integration process. I mean, we tend to forget, what a big issue that was and how hard it was for the country and for places like Maury. What role did the teachers play in making that work?
Well, in history class, Mr. Ragland, I remember, was spending what some people thought was an inordinary amount of time on the Civil War. Of course, the state of Virginia, there's a lot of history there, all the way back.
It was the capital of the Confederacy.
Absolutely.
More battles there than any place else.
Absolutely, and it's the state is filled with tremendous colonial history. And the conversation back then was one that was geared towards understanding and accepting and realizing that mistakes had been made, and realizing and having that conversation that we as a country needed to understand and grasp how severe it was bringing races together and moving forward. And I tell you what, one of the greatest experiences of my life was going to an integrated high school. Back in 1969, 70, and 71, I graduated in the spring of 72. I wouldn't trade that for anything in the world. Mm-hmm. And I go back to Jerry Sazio. He's our old football coach now. He's about damn near 80 years old now. He still has the golf tournament. And I go back and see all the fellows, and it's just a blast. And we're lots of hugs and lots of smiles. And that camaraderie is something that, we can overcome barriers. And that's what I learned. and that communication is so important, and we have a responsibility. And I have to tell you that my mother was a high school English teacher, and she taught across town at Granby High School. I actually thought I was going to be going to Granby High School because I grew up in Larchmont, and it wasn't until early August I was told, well, you're going over to Maury, because they were switching zones and doing all kinds of stuff, and there was a lot of heated discussion in the community about this, and of course the athletes were all wondering, gosh, where am I going to be playing? And so this was a hot topic, and it was in the news a lot. And so I grew up with a culture of teachers at the table, you know. I grew up when Walter Cronkite was doing the news, and my dad didn't miss it. I grew up when my mother would come home and fix dinner, and she'd talk about what kind of day she had in the classroom. And I remember my mother staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning, grading papers and doing lesson plans and spending her weekends. And I remember my mother coming home on Friday afternoon exhausted and thinking that she's going to spend her whole weekend, you know, grading papers and doing lesson plans. I mean, that was the life, because my mother wanted to make sure she did a good job and she loved her students.
How did that experience with your mother as working in that kind of job affect your sort of view of some of the issues relating to teachers today?
Well, it affected me because I wanted at first to go into education, and Morehead State.
Not football?
Well, I was, I wanted to do that too, but I thought someday that I was going to be a coach and a teacher. And so Minnesota State University at the time, as Morehead State, was a phenomenal teachers college. And so I thought that's what I was going to do, and I kind of fell into the media after my senior year of college, and I enjoyed it, so I just stayed with it. But I remember the sacrifice my mother made. I remember the conversations, and when I first came to the network job at MSNBC in 2009, I was amazed at the network conversation and the lack of respect towards the profession of teaching. And number one, I didn't like it. I knew it wasn't correct, and it was against my culture. And I knew better. And I knew that teachers weren't any different from my mother, because that's not human nature. Because the people that go into this profession, they're the unselfish Americans. They're the unselfish Americans. And so I would venture to say that there's probably every teacher in this classroom has had their belly turn in the middle of the night wondering if they're going to be able to make sure they do a great job tomorrow, and is their classroom going to succeed, and are they approaching their lesson the best way they possibly can, because that's who they are. And so when I came to MSNBC and I was doing a network radio show, I'd been doing radio for 30 years, but in 2004 we launched a national syndicated show. And it was obviously a progressive radio show that was going to take on the conservative, sound chamber in America. Education was constantly vilified. We're failing. Teachers are the problem. By the way, you have the whole summer off. Did you know that? By the way, you got a hell of a pension plan, and we think you're getting paid too much. I mean, it was just a constant narrative in a barrage, and I just knew better. And so one of the missions I had when I came to MSNBC was that President Obama had just been elected. I wanted to do health care. I wanted to do health care because I knew it could change the country, and I knew it could help people. And I wanted to focus on education. And so I took the experiences of my life and my upbringing, and my sister was a teacher in the Chesapeake school system in Virginia for 30 years. My brother-in-law was a high school football coach at Indian River, and so it was in our family. And so I was very frustrated with the negative narrative, and I just wasn't going to let it happen. I was going to tell the other side of the story, and I've been very proud to do that. And to give you an idea, at MSNBC, we are given a great deal of latitude on how we want our show promoted. And so when you see all of our different personalities out doing different things and working on themes, they said to me, Ed, what would you like to do? And I said, well, we've hit the healthcare pretty hard. I think I'd like to go on location at my high school and talk about public education, because I think that would be different. Nobody else is going to do it. And by the way, I happen to care about it. And so that's where those promos came from. And I was, really excited to do it. And, it's the truth. I speak the truth about the heart, the passion, and the desire of the teachers in this country, and I'm proud to do it.
The sort of out of order here, but I promised I'd ask you about this. Can you talk a little bit about how your views, your sort of worldview changed from previously having a more conservative outlook?
Well, when I grew up, there were a lot of things that were happening in this country. Civil rights movement, the war, the Reagan era which took place, and that's really when I got into the business community, was in early the 1980s. And I was just like any other competitor. I wanted to be the best employee in the building, and I wanted to make as much money as I could make. And it led me to somewhat of a selfish and a conservative position. But then when I started doing, and I was doing television at the time in the Dakotas and Minnesota, and then I started to do radio. About 1992, I started to fill in and started doing news. And then in 1996, I got my own radio show. Then it got syndicated regionally. And Clear Channel had come in and bought all the stations in North Dakota, and we were going to get syndicated or we were going to lose our job. And so then they put me on Western North Dakota stations, and there is a huge difference between Eastern North Dakota and Western North Dakota. And I told my wife, I said, honey, this is a kiss of death. Either we're either going to be big or we're going to fall flat on our face. I said, and I was sitting home watching a football game one Sunday afternoon, and I saw John Madden with this bus, the Madden Cruiser. And I said to Wendy, I said, that's what we're going to do. We're going to go get a bus, and we're going to drive all over North Dakota and tell the story. We'll do something different. So we bought the Big Eddie Cruiser. I talked my wife into that. And so we went around North Dakota, and you know what I found out? And this is this is like 1997, 98. We ran into a price crisis in the farm country. And the people that were actually producing the food, the farmers, were going to food pantries to feed themselves. And the suicide rate in rural America was high. And public education was getting cut. And Medicare was on the table back then for cuts. And all of these things were happening in rural America, and there wasn't anybody talking about it. And so that's when, Paul Wellstone had a very profound effect on me. We did the rally for rural America in 1998 in Washington, and I came home. And I was doing a regional show on KFGO in Fargo that was syndicated in 5 states. And I said, you know what? And I'm a Democrat. I just want you to know that you just don't roll out of bed one day and say, hey, I'm a liberal. But when you go through grassroots experiences, and you get with real people, and you see public education being attacked, and you see seniors wondering if their fixed income is going to be changed, and you see that medical services aren't getting to rural America, and you see that public education is being attacked, and a whole array of things was taking place. And I thought that the conservatives were totally on the wrong side of the issue, and I saw this concentration of wealth coming. I saw this outsourcing of jobs coming. I saw the manufacturing sector starting to be pushed to China. And I really went nuts when I saw this country gave China favored nation trading status. We were going in the wrong direction. We were taking American workers and we were telling the middle class, you don't matter anymore. And this attack on labor, this attack on organized voices in the workplace has been going on for a long time. And I think it's wrong. I think there's income inequality in this country. I think there's a society of the haves and the have-nots. And we have put the teachers in this country in the crosshairs and made them the villain. Why? Because there are conservative governors out there who have decided that they can cut 6,000 teachers in a heartbeat and not have to pay consequences for it because they have major corporations that want to privatize everything that's going to line their pockets for the next election. And so, and now, this clip that you saw a moment ago is just a few weeks ago. I'm furious with Rahm Emanuel and what's happening in Chicago. It is un-American. We're picking and choosing neighborhoods. We're picking and choosing kids. And that's not right. That's not opportunity for all. And I don't care what it costs to resource a low-income neighborhood. You can't go raise the property taxes on those folks that don't make a lot of money. So we're going to cut their resources and we're going to shut their schools. As a matter of fact, we're going to close 50 of them in Chicago. And that's supposed to be a solution for America's youth? I don't believe that's the truth. I don't believe that that's the right way to go. And so, I'm a talk show host. I don't mean to.
It's okay. Keep going. We are running out of time.
And then there was this thing called No Child Left Behind. Now, No Child Left Behind, we don't know if it would have worked because we never resourced it. The federal dollars never came. And it was Ted Kennedy, who was an honest broker that worked with George W. Bush, said, okay, I'll do this if you'll fund it. You can't find one school district across America that says we got every dime that was promised to us when it comes to federal money on No Child Left Behind. And all the pressure comes back on the teachers. All the pressures come back on all this constant testing. You know why? Because they want kids to fail. I believe that. They want cheap labor. They want cheap labor, and they want to depress wages, and they only want to educate really a few in this country, and that's wrong.
Well, we need to keep moving on here. So let's, to honor the difference that the school...
But I just want to tell you one thing.
Just one thing?
Yeah, just about... Back when I was talking to you, I was talking about 10 years ago, and I said I was a Democrat.
Right.
I'm really a Democrat now.
So let's bring out Tom Calhoun, who is a 1969 Maury High School graduate and the current president of the Norfolk Federation of Teachers, to accept an award on behalf of your high school, Maury High School in Norfolk, Virginia. No.
But take a picture of this guy. He's a good-looking guy.
Let's get the award here. Why don't you read this out loud for everybody?
I certainly will. Making a Difference Celebration, Ed Schultz honors Maury High School for the positive impact the school made in his life. Tom, congratulations for your 17 years of teaching in the Norfolk school system and your leadership with the American Federation of Teachers of the Norfolk chapter. Congratulations. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Norfolk and Maury High School means a lot to me, and I appreciate what you do for the teachers.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Ed. Thank you for all you do, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
It's a big hand for Ed Schultz.
Thank you.
There's a man who doesn't need an interviewer. So now, from the media to the arts, we're going to talk to Denise Graves and her teacher, Judith Grove Allen. Denise is a highly sought-after mezzo-soprano who has appeared with some of the greatest operatic legends and in some of the world's most fabulous opera houses and concert halls. This is a woman that if you call her a prima donna, it's not an insult, it's just an accurate description. Denise has become particularly well known for her portrayals in the title roles in Carmen and Samson and Delilah. She plays Delilah. When she's not performing at the Metropolitan Opera with Placido Domingo or other internationally acclaimed opera companies throughout the world, you might hear her amazing voice on PBS's Sesame Street or Between the Lions, or she is giving a master class at a university or returning to her high school alma mater, the Duke Ellington School of the Arts here in Washington, D.C. Washington. Judith Grove Allen has known Denise since she was a youngster. She was the music teacher at Denise's Washington, D.C. elementary and middle schools and was the assistant principal at Duke Ellington. It seems that wherever Denise goes, Judith follows. So let's watch this video about Denise Graves' incredible journey from D.C. public schools to worldwide fame.
As a young girl growing up in one of the poorest neighborhoods in the nation's capital, Denise Graves wore her own brand of confidence. Noticing her middle child's voice, Dorothy Graves encouraged Denise to sing in her Pentecostal church. And in 1979, when a tall, thin girl realized she didn't quite fit on Galveston Street, Denise auditioned and was accepted to the Duke Ellington School of the Arts. At 14, Denise discovered a recording by Leontine Price in the school library. Denise remembers saying, "I can do that."
I had two professors at the Duke Ellington School who had been very supportive of my work.
Often I go back to the Duke Ellington School to encourage them along their journey and to excite them about music making.
Stars are twinkling up in the sky. It's time for you to go Betty by. You're not sleepy, so I will try to sing an opera lullaby. A singing zoo that just so happens to be dancing too. You dance for you. Si je t'aime, si je t'aime, bravo.
Whoa. Ladies and gentlemen, Denise Graves and her teacher, Judith Grove Allen.
I'll go through the center view.
Okay.
That's what they told me.
So thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
So you've appeared with both Placido Domingo and Elmo. So
Are you going to ask me which one I like the best?
that was my next question. Which
That's an unfair question.
What was it? Well, just describe a little bit. What was it like with each of them?
Well, Elmo lives. I'm here to tell you that. Yeah. They said to me when we were, because that was one of 10 different segments that we did for Sesame Street, and they said, you know, try not to react to the puppeteers, just really, you know, react to the puppets themselves, and it was magical. At the time, I didn't have children, and I was there with my nephews, who, I mean, that made me cool Aunt Denise I got a lot of mileage out of that, yeah. They still ask, do you still have your job at Sesame Street, Aunt Denise? No. But Placido, of course, is in a category all on his own. Yeah, he's magnificent.
And did you do Samson and Delilah with him?
I heard you say that I sang Delilah. Yeah, it's true, I did. But sometimes I sang his part as well. No, I did. I've done it in many different forms with him being Samson, and also under his baton, conducting Samson and Delilah. Once here with Washington National Opera, and one night the tenor got sick. He handed the baton over to the associate conductor and came on stage and sang the Samson. Wow. That was great fun.
There, that's like a Star is Born.
There you go.
Yeah. So you mentioned that Judith
Yes.
made the difference in your life. Why don't you talk a little bit about what made her so special?
Oh, it's a beautiful story. I remember very clearly the first day of kindergarten, and I didn't want to go. And I remember crying, and I was very attached to my mother, and I said, oh, I don't want to go, and I remember just crying incessantly after she'd left until they took me to music class. And I don't know what it is we were working on, different songs, and would prepare for concerts, but she started to sing, and I thought that she had the most beautiful voice that I'd ever heard.
That's quite a compliment coming from her.
I never heard this part.
That's true. And I went to school just so that I could go to her classes.
Wow.
So I just thought she had a beautiful voice, and she was always so kind to me, and I thought she hung the moon up in the sky, and so.
What were your first impressions?
I had the most beautiful voice. No, I'm really not a singer. I have to admit, I'm not a singer. I play the piano. My key was in the room playing the piano. But I did notice Denise ready to receive. Just, she wasn't grabbing at everything, you know. She's just, what do you have next for me? And it's fun to teach a class like that. And it went on from there. And should I tell the whole story?
I think you should tell the whole story. This is really a remarkable story about the role that the teacher played in the opera star's future.
She, later in elementary school, we were participating in a all-school program for elementary, junior high, and senior high. And she was one of the persons I selected. And she did that for several years. And in junior high, I didn't teach her music, but I transferred to another building, Friendship School. And she was in the middle school area. And her mother was very lenient with me. And when I could find something for her to do, and as other students do, I could find something for her to do outside of class, her mother gave me permission to take her with me. So we went to opera, and I don't remember the name of the opera.
You took her to her first opera?
Yes. And
you don't know which was?
I'm sorry, I just don't remember. But at the end, we were standing up in the balcony, and she said, "That's what I want to do."
Wow.
Beethoven's Fidelio.
Oh, it's Fidelio,
Beethoven's Fidelio at the, but if I can just expand a little bit on that story. So I met her when I was, well, how old are you in kindergarten? 4 or 5, something like that. I was 4 or 5. And so she was my music teacher from kindergarten through 6th grade. And at that time, you would give me little solos and that sort of thing with the choir. And then when I graduated elementary school to go off to junior high school, unbeknownst to both of us, we ended up at the same junior high school. And so we were there together again. And then that's where I got involved in All City Chorus. Do you remember? You told me about All City Chorus, and she used to come and pick me up from my house every Saturday, take me to rehearsal, stay there during the rehearsal, and bring me back home. That's dedication.
Now, did you have a sense of what kind of talent she had at that point? I mean, did you realize this might be a world-class opera star?
I didn't think it would go to wherever she landed. I didn't think that, but it's so much fun to have a student ready to learn. I mean, she had her moments too, but.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, let's hear about one of those moments. Yeah.
No, but she
Oh.
But
she talked back.
Well, maybe so.
Did she chew gum in class?
Okay, all right, you got the sense of it. But you know the ironic part. my name was Grove and hers Graves. Although I'm married, used to be Allen. But at that time, my name was Judith Allen. And students
Grove, yeah.
maybe saw a connection. Is she your mother?
Yeah.
Grave and Grove. Is she your daughter?
My spiritual mother.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
and then there's those names. So after that review in the opera, she needed to go to Duke Ellington School of the Arts. And the application was passed on to her. She auditioned, and
if I can just interject something, it wasn't quite exactly like that. I ran into you in the hallway, and you said to me, where have you decided to go for high school? And I said, I don't know. And you said, you should look at the Duke Ellington School for the Arts. You have a pretty voice, and you should audition for their music program. You got the application. We filled it out together. We filled it out together. I did the audition. I was accepted. And then she became the vice principal of the school.
Wow.
So,
That's great. And these are just coincidences, really?
these are just coincidences from
the junior high school
kindergarten.
and, wow.
From kindergarten through the time that I finished.
Grove and Grave.
Grove and Grave. And then I believe I understand you played a role also in organizing some fundraising. Talk about that.
After she she did her senior recital at Duke Ellington School of the Arts. She wasn't a student of mine, but I attended that recital. That voice, tears come to my eyes when I just think about how I realized she had developed from elementary school to senior high school. And I said, I took the question to my church. I have a club called the Zion Baptist Church Culture Club in Washington, D.C. And I said, we must do something about this young lady before she slips through the cracks. And I knew where her mother was working, and I knew she had a sister and brother. It's hard to send a person onto college with the income that was coming into the family, and she was the oldest. And my church club, honest to goodness, they just never questioned about who is she, what is she doing, da 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 da. We started working, started raising the money, and I passed the hat around to the teachers at school, no problem. A Masonic group and a group from Eastern Star, no problem. We had her in college in September.
Where were you in college?
Oberlin College, Kentucky.
She went to Oberlin College in Ohio, which has a very distinguished music program.
And I would like to say something, too. Although we raised the money, Oberlin did give her $5,000 scholarship. But this young lady was not afraid to work. She had outside jobs to keep her going. I mean, she wasn't sitting back like a princess. She showed effort, and I think it pushed us on. It's just miraculous, and I told her if her mother had gone to another neighborhood, our paths may not have crossed.
Wow.
But I just thank God that it happened like it did.
It was divine.
Talk a little bit about the impact for you. Talk a little bit about the impact for you of having somebody believe in you so much.
It made the difference. I mean, I have the career that I have, the life that I have today because of Judy. No question about it. No question about it. You know, I grew up in Southwest Washington, and the fact that I became interested in opera did not lend itself to my popularity. I mean, that did not, that sort of thing did not play well, you know, in the hood, as it were. And, and with Judy, I had a haven, a safe haven, a place where I could go, where I felt understood and appreciated. And because she saw and was able to sort of see right through me and see what my potential was, that made me work even harder. She sort of echoed that with the work that the Culture Club did to put me through school, in that we were encouraging each other. And because they also had so much faith in me, I didn't want to let them down. And so I think it was a real beautiful exchange that was going on between us. My mother used to say to me, you know, Denise, if you do something and nobody saw it, don't think you got away with it. You know, she used to say, you know, your grandmother in heaven saw you, you know. And so I was trying to live, and I still try to, as if my grandmother's watching me, as if my children are watching me, and so as if Judy were watching me and the people in the Culture Club. So I wanted to do the best and offer my best, because there was this incredible group of people who just rallied around me and lifted me up and said, you know, go out there and do it. And it made all the difference to me in, you know, coming from where I came from, growing up in the neighborhood that I grew up in, to have someone who saw me, who believed in me, who went out of her way to extend herself in every way possible. I mean, she is family now. There's no question about it. It was personal. I mean, she's working at the school, and she would take the whole of her Saturday to come pick me up, take me to rehearsal, bring me back, come to my recitals, speak to me often, wanting to know what was going on, how I was developing. And she was there watching over my development by that time in high school. And so to have that kind of support and that kind of belief made the difference. She was the guardian angel in my life. There was no one else. Like, I've had wonderful teachers, but no one who has extended themselves the way she has.
What a wonderful story. Let me change the subject a little bit. You know, there's a movement around the country to, because of budget pressures, to reduce spending on arts and cultural activities in the school system. And Judith, I just wonder what you think about that, the trend of focusing more on math and reading to the exclusion of other subjects like music or art.
I believe the academics are very important, of course. But I just think if a child has some artistic experience early in life, later on he will find a way to express himself in anger. He can write, he can dance, she can dance, she can play the drums, rather than hit somebody over the head. We have anger on in all of us, but you have to have a constructive environment and a constructive hallway to vent that anger and emotions, and to have the funds withdrawn from the arts. It's a cruel mistake. Mm-hmm.
I know from my own experience, when I was in elementary school, they would take us to the Constitution Hall to hear the National Symphony play once a year. It was like, and you'd learn how to go to the concert, go to the symphony. You know, you stand up when the conductor walks in, and it sort of, you know, how to follow a program, and that really was my introduction to classical music, which I love to this day. And the one thing I remember is they always played The Ride of the Valkyries from one of Wagner's operas. They always played that because they thought that would appeal to kids. So that was one of the first pieces of music I learned from opera. But
what thing, Bob? Oh, excuse me, please. That I wanted to say to add to what I still don't feel right saying Judy, what Miss Grove said. Is that Miss Allen? To me, you're Miss Grove still. Is that I grew up in a neighborhood here in Washington, D.C., where there was a tremendous amount of negative stimuli that I think is readily available for children today all over the world. And I'm convinced that had it not, one of the reasons that I didn't sort of fall prey to peer pressure is because I had a great love affair early on with music. There was nothing that any kind of synthetic or drug could provide for me the way that music lifted me, the kind of natural high that I got from music. There was nothing that was comparable to that. I'm convinced that it saved my life. I'm absolutely convinced that, you know, that was, I can't prove that, but I believe that we could maybe survive without the arts. I don't think we'd be human beings without it.
You want to give the award now? You want to give the award now?
Yes, sure.
So make sure. No, let's keep it. You can read this.
You know, I want to thank you and this organization for this acknowledgement of teachers like Miss Grove. This is just so spectacular to encourage all of the wonderful teachers who are doing far more than we can ever know, you know. I'm sure I wasn't the only student that she extended herself to in this way. Everybody knows her and loves her, and she has been a great mother to so many of my friends and so many of the other students. And I think that so often the teachers have the most important job there is in the world in the first place. Everybody knows that. But to have that be recognized on a stage like this, I think is so very, very important. So thank you all for this acknowledgement for Miss Grove.
You want to read that?
Oh, isn't that beautiful? So it says, the inscription reads, "Making a Difference Celebration. Denise Graves honors Judith T. Grove Allen for making the difference in my life." Isn't that gorgeous? Beautiful. Look at that.
Thank you.
Not everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.
Why don't you stand with her?
Thank you. And thank you,
Thank
too.
you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kiss the other cheek, girls. The other one will get jealous. I told her if she kissed just one cheek, the other cheek will get jealous.
I got it.
That's right.
That's what they teach you in Europe.
Right.
You go for opera.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It's lovely.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.
That's an inspirational story, if ever I heard one. So now, last but not least, we have Tony Danza and his teacher he worked with, actually, David Cohn. Tony Danza seemingly can do it all. You might know him from his stints on TV, Who's the Boss, and the hit show Taxi. He's also an accomplished song and tap dance man. And I was actually sitting with him, we had a dinner beforehand, and I was sitting next to him at the dinner, and this guy's a very genuine guy. I mean, he's, and you think sometimes these celebrities are gonna be superficial, and he really seems to be an authentic person. He also was a boxer. He was a professional boxer, middleweight. He was 12-3, which is pretty impressive. He is going to be on Broadway soon. He's been on Broadway before. He's going to do it again. And he doesn't want to talk about any of that. He doesn't want to talk about the hit TV show, the boxing career. He wants to talk about what it was like teaching in a public school, because that's what he wanted to do for a year from 2009 to 2010. You know, you hear teachers say all the time, if you would only step into our shoes and see what it's really like to teach day in and day out, you'd have a different attitude about teachers and education. Well, he actually did it. And not just for an hour or a day, he became a full-time 10th grade English teacher for a year at Philadelphia's Northeast High School. And A&E, the network A&E, documented his year in the classroom in a show called Teach, Tony Danza. And Tony wrote about the experience in a book, and this is a great title for the book. It says, "I'd like to apologize to every teacher I ever had, my year as a rookie teacher at Northeast High." That's the title of the book. And as you may have heard, he will be signing copies after the session tonight. Tony co-taught with David Cohn. You can imagine what that year was like. David is now the Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment for the public schools in Springfield, Vermont. So here we have a video here. It seems that Tony always wanted to work with kids.
I know there are a lot of things that you're interested in helping young people.
A couple of years ago, I was a brokester, and now you guys are interviewing me. You know, so I think that all this, there must be some kind of a payback, and I think the payback in my case is somehow helping kids. I was, you know, I was an education major in college, and
you're a teacher. I didn't realize that.
Well, I had a little degree.
Everybody gets nervous on their first day of school. I'm no different. It's hard being the new guy. You know, where I come from, I'm pretty popular, but that's not going to help me here. I'm Mr. Danza. I'm your English teacher. Let's take attendance. I think the teacher that influenced me the most was a 10th grade English teacher in Malvern High School, Mr. Messenger. He made English fun. He had such enthusiasm for it that it was infectious. He was the first person, really, to turn me on to the theater. Why is teaching so important? We have a kid drop out in America every 26 seconds. That's insane. We need a new generation of teachers to join the ones already making a difference in the classroom. Inspire a child. Teach.
Ladies and gentlemen, Tony Danza and David Cohn.
Yeah, okay, got it to you. Okay. Hey. Bob, I'm gonna go, yeah, I'm gonna go here. Good evening. Hello, everybody. Sit, please. Thank you very much. It's such an honor to be here. It really is. I know that nobody else has made a speech, but what the heck, with this audience, I can't help myself. I just want to tell you a little bit about what I went through. You know, Arthur Miller once said that the best thing that we can hope for is that we end up with the right regrets. And that's how my whole thing got started. I was dealing with a couple of my regrets. And I was also dealing at that moment with closing in on my 60th birthday. You know, wow, 60, it's over the speed limit, you know, it's crazy. And so, and this confluence of circumstances had me thinking about my life. I think that's what happens to you anyway. When you turn 60, you get reflective, unlike teachers who have to be reflective all the time. But when you turn 60, you get reflective. You know, you turn 50, you start waking up with injuries. But 60, you start thinking about your life. You know, about what one thing becomes very clear to you, that you only get one life, and then you start thinking about what have you done with it, what should you have done with it, what haven't you done. And I always had this romantic idea about being a teacher. I went to school to be a teacher. I studied to be a teacher, but when I finished college, I just thought I just wasn't ready to teach anybody anything, to tell you the truth. My classmates and my friends went on to be teachers, and I went on to be a prize fighter. I was Tough Tony Danza, Brooklyn's knockout artist, you know? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, my mother was furious. You went to college, now you're going to be a boxer, you know? And then she went nuts when I told her I was thinking about driving a cab in New York City. She went nuts. But then I got the TV show Taxi, and she felt better. But anyway, teaching stayed with me. And it has stayed with me, you know. If you watch my TV show, if you watch Who's the Boss, you know that my character went on to be a teacher. Tony Masella became a teacher. That was not an accident. So actually, the teaching thing was like more a road not taken and less a regret. The real regret, I think, was I, like a lot of people, look back on my school years and I wonder why I didn't try harder, why I didn't apply myself, why didn't I let the teachers who were trying so hard to help me give me the help they were trying to give me. By the way, I really think this is what we need to do. You know, we need to convince the kids that they're not living in the America of 40 years ago when you could goof off or even drop out and still get a good job and have that great middle-class American life. We have to convince them that, considering the world they live in, the time they live in, that they're going to regret even more so not making the most of their time in school. But I'll get back to that. Anyway, so, excuse me. Stay away from the eggplant parmesan. Anyway, so I decided to take a couple of years off and try to become a teacher. I just, you know, I was going to do it. I got the information on Teach for America, started doing my research, and then I did what I always do when I want to do something really bad, but I'm afraid that I might not follow through. I told all my friends. I tell everybody, you know. It's unbelievable. That's actually how I wrote my book. You know, I went around telling all my friends, hey, I'm writing a book. A couple of months went by, I started hearing, hey, where's your book? When we're going to see that book? It's a tremendous motivator, you know. So anyway, I was telling people that I was going to take off a couple of years and try to be a teacher in an inner city school in America and see what it was really like. And then I happened to tell a friend of mine who was a reality TV producer. And he said to me immediately, he said, oh, you know, that would make a great TV show. And I thought, you can't do it as a TV show because you're going to have, it's going to, you know, the show would have one agenda, which would be ratings, and the teacher, as a teacher, I would have another agenda, students. And then I didn't want any part of a reality TV. I mean, reality TV is like a misnomer, isn't it? I mean, let's be honest. And I didn't want any part of it. And I really didn't think he could sell a teacher show. He called me back 20 minutes later and said, hey, we have a meeting at the A&E network to discuss your new teacher show. And I said, wow, you know, my new teacher show, that sounded pretty good, you know. So then I thought, you know, maybe if we could do it right and show what was really going on inside an American high school, show what teachers were up against, and show that to a wide audience, to a TV audience, maybe, you know, maybe we could have an impact. So that's how the show Teach on A&E came to be. It ran for a total of 6 weeks. Great ratings. It ran for a total of 6 weeks, and then the cameras and the crew that was following me around everywhere I went, which was a relief, by the way. They packed up and they left, and then I was there, and I still had the goal to try to be the best teacher I could be, and I still wanted to give the kids what they deserve, the only 10th grade, and I know it's a little ironic that I was teaching English. So anyway, but they were only going to get one, and they needed it to be good, and it didn't matter that I was the teacher. I still had to do it right. And by the way, I felt as a teacher, and you know, I don't think this is talked about a lot, but this responsibility of having these kids' futures in your hands was overwhelming to me. Anyway, so I stayed the year. And Northeast High School, by the way, just let me describe it. Oh, you know it? Okay. Oh, yeah. It's on the, any Vikings in the house? Ooh. It's on the corner of Cottman and Algon in northeast Philly. It's a comprehensive high school of 3,500 kids. It's one of the most diverse student bodies in the country. There's over 50 languages spoken in the school. It's a snapshot of how America is going to look pretty soon. There were over 200 teachers there. And to tell you the truth, they weren't all the best teachers. I mean, there's bad teachers. There are, just like there's bad actors. I mean, you know, they were all over the place. But what I saw was many more discouraged teachers. And the statistics bear me out. You know, you all know 30% quit after 3 years, and almost 50% quit after 5 years. And I went to orientation, you know, in Philadelphia, in the district. I had to do orientation, strong beginnings. I went to orientation with 800 first-year teachers. And I got to tell you, it was amazing. I mean, there were some experienced teachers coming in from other districts, but basically it was all, you know, young kids out of college, ready to take on the world, change the world, teach their students, and make a difference, you know. And I mean it. You could have taken over the world with these kids. You know, they were so ready. And so I wonder how we snuff out that kind of enthusiasm so quickly, you know. And on the other end of the spectrum, at the end of the school year last year, I went to, I'm still connected with Northeast, and I went to a party for 34 teachers from Northeast who are retiring this year. And most of them weren't really ready to retire. They were doing it because of economic reasons. I don't have to explain that to you. And I wonder how we attract quality people to fill those vacancies, because they really were the backbone of the school. Speaking of killing teacher enthusiasm, that brings me to the title of my book, which is, I'd like to apologize to every teacher I ever had my year as a rookie teacher at Northeast. I remember telling the publisher, he said, we'll never get it on the cover, but we did it anyway. But the title is based on a couple of things. One that when I was in school, I didn't respect my teachers. I didn't respect their life's work, and I pretty much tortured them. And two, at Northeast High, I got a year-long glimpse at how hard it is to teach the youth of today, what it's like to be a teacher. I mean, let's make a teacher job list, okay? I love lists. I can't say lists, but I love making them. So each teacher is responsible for 150 students. And let me change one word. In high school, 150 teenagers, each with their own electronic device. Oh, yes, yes. Nowadays, the unmotivated student is no longer the exception. And that always makes me think, geez, how much less fun school would have been if everybody was like me. Today, in order to get the kids to work, the teacher has to show the kids, has to show the students that he really cares about them, really cares about them. Now, of course, good teachers care about their kids, you know that. But nowadays, you really got to let them know. You really got to show them, you know, because you hear kids say it all the time. Mrs. So-and-so doesn't even care. She doesn't like me, so I don't do the work, you know. So you got to show them. You got to show 150 teenagers that you care. You got to make sure of that, right? And by the way, that's not all. Today, you got to be so many other things to kids. You got to be a mother, a father sometimes. You got to be a brother, a sister, a nemesis, a social worker, a therapist. So many things. And then what's funny is that once they know you care, which is great, because they may work a little, but then for sure, they will tell you about their lives. They will unload on you. And I mean, and some of the things you hear really shake you up. I mean, it's unbelievable. Sometimes you even have to report things that they told you, even after they've confided in you. And it's tough. For me, it was like the hardest part of the job. It was an emotional grind. I kept having adoption fantasies, too. That was the other problem. Oh, it was driving me crazy. I wasn't prepared for it. I don't think teachers are trained or prepared for it, and I know I wasn't. Now, on the other side of the desk, the kids have been conditioned to think it's the teacher's job to teach them. It's not their job. And by the way, well, you know, the mantra in the Philadelphia district is, how are you engaging your students? What are you doing to engage your students? Well, the kids notice, and they come in, they plop down, they say, I'm here, I did my share, come on, engage me. I mean, I fought that attitude the whole year. You know what I did? I made the kids make a big sign. I made it put it up right in front of the blackboard, above the blackboard in the front of the room, and I made them recite it every day. Every day we come in, it's take part in your own education. Because no matter what we do, we can't want an education for our kids more than they want it for themselves. But, thank you. But what we can do is want it for them, and want it for all of them. So here's what I think. I think we have to admit that we are sort of reaping you know, I mean, uh-oh, I skipped a page. Oh, God. That's funny. That's really funny. That is really funny. All right, I'm on my own. Okay. That's really weird. Are you kidding me? All right. That's okay. Okay. We really want it for them. And we have to want it for all of them. And I really think this other page would be so much fun here. Oh, I know it's here. Just let me look because I know. 3,500 kids. You could have pretty tortured them. So you have to make sure on the other side of the desk where the heck's the next page. Okay. Well, it'll show up. All right, anyway. So we have to want it for all of them. That's what I'm saying. So here's what I think is happening. What I think is happening is I'm glad to be a voice for the teachers. It's weird. Considering how I treated my teachers when I was a kid, it's weird that I'm even talking for the teachers. You know what's weird? I have people coming up to me, teachers coming up to me in New York now, walking up to me on the streets in New York saying, I read your book, thank you, and I accept your apology. It's crazy. So I enjoy being a voice for the teachers. I really do. I think you know, teaching it takes a tremendous commitment, and it should be venerated. It should be, and I'm really proud and happy to be part of it, and to have done it is an incredible experience for me, and it changed my life. But one of the things that I really like to do now too is also be a voice for the kids. Because I think what's happened is that it's so much harder to be a kid nowadays. It really is. And I think the problems that the kids are facing make it so much harder for us, for the teachers, for you, to teach them. It's one of the reasons it's so hard. And I think that our culture at large, writ large, is not helping. I mean, it's one of the things that I talk about all the time. I mean, it's the page. Let me put it this way. I used to tell my kids in my 10th graders, I'd say, hard work and good behavior will pay off. Right? I'd pound it into them every day. And then they go home and watch Jersey Shore. And they come back and say, no, Mr. Danza, there's another way. We can do this. And don't get me wrong. I got nothing against Jersey Shore. I got nothing against the cast of Jersey Shore. You hear that all the time, too. Oh, I hate the people on that show. Are you kidding? If I was 22 and you told me, go down to the beach, act out, and I'll pay you, I would be afraid to see the footage. It's not the cast that schedules those shows. You know what I mean? And believe me, I got nothing against making money on TV. I had a couple good years myself. But I always thought that with great responsibility, with great influence, I mean, comes responsibility. And it seems to me that we have just forgotten that. You know, think about when I was young, there was a national, public and private effort to nurture our children. You remember this? I mean, by the way, Coca-Cola came in 6-ounce bottles. Think about that, 6 ounces. When you watch the Warner Brothers, a Bugs Bunny cartoon, there were so many references to classical music, history, that you could win Jeopardy after you watched the cartoon. I mean, that's when we thought about it, you know. Now, it's the supersized sodas and the endless barrage of the bad example. You know, and all of this, and the hard sell, too. I mean, because the culture, it cares very little for our kids' well-being, and it just cares about their buying power, you know. And so, and this is all, it's all amplified by this new social media, which is also not in the nurturing business, and which doesn't take any prisoners. You know, the hurdles for our children continue. Let's see. Let's go on. 1 in 4, the Hunger Alliance reports that 1 in 4 children in America is hungry. But you don't got to worry about that because we got a new euphemism for it. The euphemism is they're not hungry. They just live in food-insecure homes. 25% of every 5-year-old, 1 in 4 of every 5-year-old, I'm not talking about minorities, every 5-year-old in America lives at or beneath the poverty line. I mean, can you imagine that in America? And try to imagine the lives of these kids for 1 second. Unlike my life when I was a kid, right? I wasn't worried about anything, all right? Now you got to worry that maybe you get evicted from your house, that you may get shot on the way to school, that you may not have food. I mean, the stress that our children are going through has long-term effects. I mean, we bail out banks and let our kids go hungry. I found it. And I want to go on. Now, some parts are going to keep going. Some parts of the minority cultures are not helpful either. Education, again, not celebrated. I mean, the culture not only doesn't celebrate education, it undermines education. It even undermines childhood. I mean, it makes me crazy. In our country, the overall out-of-wedlock birth rate is 44%. Imagine this, 44%. In the minority communities, it can be as high as 75%. Single mothers trying to raise kids when they're kids themselves. One of the best indicators, as you know, of student achievement is the academic success of the mother in the home. Well, there's no model in these homes. And you know, there's no academic success, therefore no model. And as you know, teachers, you gotta model it. You gotta have to model it, right? That's teacher talk. Gotta have a yeah, you gotta have a graphic organizer. Yeah. A little collaborative learning, huh? Don't make me say Venn diagram. At the same time, America is 37th in the world in preschool education. 37th in the world. So when these kids do get to school finally, they're so far behind already. And again, this has long-term effects. And let me ask you something. Isn't this a pay me now or pay me a lot more later situation? Because stressed out 5-year-olds grow up to be unhappy, unproductive adults. And believe me, that's another thing. Believe me, I don't want to pay for the deadbeats either. I really don't. But I don't think you can literally throw the babies out with the bathwater. And then there's the mixed messages we send our kids. I mean, it's crazy. We tell our kids, you gotta go to school. School's important. Then we send them to a building that's a dump. It's a mixed message. They go to the mall. They see what's important. To cut costs at the school I was at, they had to lay off one of the school nurses and cut some of the students' favorite programs and activities. Wrong message. You can't tell kids, you gotta go to college. Gotta go to college, and then make it so expensive they can't even imagine going. The only thing, imagine you're in Northeast Philly, you say, oh, I'd like to go to that college. Then you see how much it costs, you go, why even try? You know? The only thing that has outstripped the cost of the rise in the cost of healthcare is the rise in the cost of a college education. There's now more college loan debt than credit card debt in America. We're still debating whether there should be a raise in the interest rate of some student loans to 7%. Wouldn't it be great if you could get 7% on your savings? And somebody please try to explain to me how it is cool, how we can feel good about profiting, both in the private sector and by the federal government, on our kids' educations. What is that about? And then there's the violence, the real violence, as we all know that the kids face. As we all know, the news is filled with stories where children are losing their lives almost every day, and it's got to be scary to the kids, don't you think? I mean, it wasn't like that when I was a kid. I felt safe. Walking in some neighborhood or wearing the wrong clothes or color never got me in trouble. We need to have a real discussion about the causes of all this violence, its causes and its remedies. We have to be open about the racism in all of us, and open about how some of this violence is cultural. It's ingrained in the fabric of some of the communities by its glorification in songs, music videos, movies, terribly violent video games, and terribly violent video games. And I know that the right has decided to use this as a cudgel to try to distract us from having the conversation. But it doesn't matter. We still need to talk about this because in some of the communities, it's epidemic. I work at a youth development program in New York called the All Stars Project. It's terrific. It's a youth development through performance. Kids come from all over the city, from the worst neighborhoods in the city, from East New York and Brooklyn, from the South Bronx and Queens. And they come there, and it's an amazing thing to see what happens to them. At a meeting there with 30 inner city kids, the first 4 that spoke up said they lost a friend or a family member to gun violence. The first 4. We stopped asking. I mean, it got to that point, you know. And is there any doubt why these kids aren't worried about the future? They don't think they're going to have one. And again, I know the right is using this as a cudgel. That we, you know, oh, that's what we should be talking about, the violence in the black community or minority communities. It's part of the problem. We need to have the conversation about all of it. And because when I talk to the kids, it's interesting. They say to me, why is it that some of the violence is talked about, the Zimmerman trial? Why is that so talked about and the violence in our neighborhood swept under the rug? So the kids are worried about that. The killing of that young girl in Chicago is particularly bad. Remember the girl, Hadia Pendleton? She had performed at the inauguration of the president, and then she was a good kid. You know, she was an honor student, a majorette. She spoke out on YouTube against gun and gang violence. I mean, she put herself on the line. She was shot she was shot in a park, shot and killed in a park about a block from the president's house. And here's the problem, see? Here's the problem. What's the message in her death? If I'm a kid in that environment, the message is, you know, why should I be good? I end up dead anyway. So this is a conversation we need to have. You know, in my book, I recount some of the life circumstances of some of my students. And some of it, I did have to report. And for me, it's hard to imagine being a good student, you know, having to deal with these kinds of issues. And a great teacher can be and is an effective tool to fight poverty. But the teacher can't be the only tool. I mean, we should consider that. We should consider that. And there are many other factors when we blame teachers and their unions for all our public education problems. We got to factor all of that in it. You know, I tried to teach the kids life lessons when I was teaching, you know, and I was trying to connect whatever we were doing to their lives. It was one of the things that I thought I missed when I was in school. How did this relate to me, my life? So I arranged this trip to New York City. I hooked this thing up, you know. We're going to go up by bus, and we'd go to Central Park, Times Square. We'd see a Broadway show, see West Side Story, and then finish at dinner at Patsy's, a restaurant in the theater district that my friend Sal Scognamillo owns, where Frank Sinatra used to hang out. So, all right, so I told the kids, they'd never been to New York. They were crazy. Oh, we're going to New York. Yay, we're going crazy. And then the word got out that we were going to New York, and we started to grow chaperones, you know. You know, teachers wanted to go to New York, you know, so I think it ended up like 3-1. It was crazy. Well, that wasn't it. See, what happened was later on that day, I was walking through the hallway, and I got a message that the principal now wanted to go to New York with us. So I went to the classroom, and I said to the kids, Miss Carroll wants to go. No! We can't have the principal. We'll have no fun. I said, this is a perfect opportunity to teach you a lesson that if you learn this very important lesson well, it will serve you well the rest of your lives. That very important lesson is making the best of a bad situation. I explained to them why this was a bad situation, because I told them, listen, let me explain something to you. No matter what you want to happen, the principal's going. And we can handle it one of two ways. We can tell her we don't want her to go. We can hurt her feelings. I hear she's got a hell of a memory. Or we can write her a note. We'll write her a note and say, Miss Carroll, we wouldn't want to go to New York without you. you know, and then maybe we'll have a friend in the principal's office if we ever need it. Well, it was a long time before they saw the wisdom of my logic, but eventually they got it, you know. And so we went to New York, and that lesson, that making the best of a bad situation, kept coming up in the literature all through the year. It was incredible, right? Oh, by the way, the trip was great. Kids had a ball. They'd never seen New York City. They went crazy. The play was unbelievable. I got a break. The usher, we were upstairs in the balcony at West Side Story at the Palace, and the usher was the usher when I did the producers at the St. James. So she said to the kids, you know, your teacher was on Broadway. And my kid said to me, you set that up, right? Anyway, we had a great time. Even the principal had a good time until one of the kids lit a match on the bus that they must have taken from the restaurant, you know. She was hotter than a match. It was unbelievable. If you get to New York, check out Patsy's on 56. Tell them Tony sent you. Anyway, so how do we fix this? How do we fix this? You know, along with that real honest conversation that I think we really need to have, the only solution I could and can see is that we have to commit to educating all of America's children. And we got to commit the resources. And then the kids have to be convinced that since we have committed the resources, that in spite of their legitimate and formidable obstacles that they face, no matter what they are, homelessness, violence, bad parents, no parents, bad school, even bad teacher, they have to take advantage of this little slice of their lives. You know, we're now competing with the rest of the world. China and India will dwarf the United States in the number of college grads in the next 10 years. The people in those countries know education is the only way to secure a better life, and they want what we take for granted. Now, kids are going to need skills. They're going to have to be ready to adapt to an ever-changing employment picture. We need, you know what we need? We need a national campaign, like the ones we use to change the attitudes of the whole country on drunk driving and on smoking. We could do this. The kids need to be convinced that we value them, and that they can do it, and that it's all worth it. And then we have to have patience along with the determination, because you got to remember, they're just kids. It's one of the things that we don't remember. They're just kids, and they don't get it. They're young, just like I didn't. And one more thing, on the subject of educating all of America's kids, the move to privatize education is fraught. I think it's very dangerous. It's troubling. In Philadelphia, as in many districts, many cities, the district is closing a large number of public schools and converting to charter schools. And if charter schools were all working, there would be no discussion, folks. But they're not. They're not. Some work and some don't. And the worry is that privatization makes a two-tier system inevitable. The motivated kids with their motivated parents and guardians in one school, and everybody else left behind. And the schools that are left behind will be the ones with the further budget cuts. So it's just not, it doesn't work. I mean, and by the way, isn't Education for Profit trying to like do a reality show about a teacher? I don't know, anyway. You know, when I speak to young people, I often ask them, this is my big thing, I often ask young people if they know what the motto of America is. Anybody know what the motto of America is? Right. Well, nobody knows, not many people know it. Even people my own age are stumped. Ah, right, of course. Okay, so some people know it. You ask a kid, they have no idea. Don't tread on me? No. You know, yeah. So, you know, we used to hear it a lot when I was a kid. I used to hear it a lot because my father really loved it. You know, it's Latin, it's e pluribus unum, it's on the seal, it's on the flag, it's on the money. It means out of many, one. You know, I used to hear it a lot because my father liked it. He used to say, hey, pal, we're all in this together, e pluribus unum. Yeah, okay, Dad. Yeah, but, you know, that's the message I think we should be sending our kids and to each other, that we really are in all together. You know, the new saying, the new motto of America is, hey, I got mine, how come you ain't got yours? That's not right. You know, I got to tell you one story. I gave one detention all year. One detention. It's hard to give a detention because I felt if I came down too hard on some of these kids who really deserved it, I might lose them completely. You know, you have to walk that fine line, right? Finally, the good kids were mad at me. The good kids were mad because they, well, take control, will you? Stop letting them get away with this. I had 2 girls come to me. This is true. 2 girls came to me and said to me, Mr. Danza, you got to grow some balls. So finally it happened. It happened. Charmaine Brown, oh, she was great. I loved her. She was one. So some days she'd lead the class, other days she just didn't want to be there. The one day, and she's always late. So I told her, Charmaine, please don't be late anymore. So she walked in late, disrupted the class. That was it. I said it. That's it. That's it, Charmaine. That's a detention. She protested, but I stayed strong. I stayed strong. I'm just a little late. I don't care. You know, I was really tough. So then I set a detention for 7:15 in the morning before school. By the way, I didn't know when I gave a detention I had to be there. The hell? Don't they just go to some detention place? What is this? Anyway, so she shows up at 7:15 on time. She shows up, and you know, she's quite a character, very smart, incredible kid. So I said to her, and we start talking. I said, Charmaine, how long you think you're going to be in school? She goes, oh, forever. I said, no. I said, no, sweetheart, here's your life. This much is school, but this much will inform the whole rest of your life. It's really important that you take advantage of this. I said, you don't want to be out here when you're older. And believe me, you will be older. And looking back and saying, geez, I wish I would have tried harder like somebody else I know, you know. I even hit her with a little Shakespeare. You know, we had studied, I asked her if she remembered what Brutus said to Cassius when they were going to go into battle with Antony. And we studied Julius Caesar in the class. It would have been great if she remembered, but she didn't. So I told her, that Shakespeare says there was a tide in the affairs of men, which taken at its flood leads on to fortune, omitted, and the rest of their lives is mired in the shallows and the miseries. I don't know if it helped, but she went to college. She's in Delaware in college now, so pretty good. Look, I loved teaching. I loved it. It was unbelievable. Although when the principal asked me at the end of the year if I wanted to come back, I said, you know, at my age, I'm not sure I want to care this much about anything. But I did love it, and I loved writing about it. I think my book is good. It's good for first-year teachers and for second-career teachers. Because when you're crying over a blown lesson or because some kid broke your heart, you know you're not the only one. All right. Teaching isn't only a job, it's a calling. The rewards, as we know, are not monetary, and certainly lately, not even status. But what a teacher does it for those moments when he or she knows she made a little difference that maybe could turn into a big difference. When I was leaving Northeast High at the end of the year, a great teacher, I loved her, and she gave me a box, a gift in a box, and it was like I was running, I was in a hurry, and I just stuffed it in my bag, and I went and I got on a train, and I had time to look at it. I took it out, and it was a plaque. And in the plaque was a story etched on it. And it's the story, I'm sure most of you have heard it, it's the story of a huge storm that roils the ocean and washes thousands of starfish out onto the beach. The clouds break, the sun comes out and starts to bake the starfish. A guy comes walking along, you know, and he sees all these starfish. He doesn't know what to do, so he starts bending down, picking them up one by one and throwing them in the water. And his friend comes along and he says, what are you doing? There's so many of them. You're not going to make that much of a difference. And the guy bends down and picks up another one and throws it in the water. He says, made a difference to that one. Well, that's what it's about. That's what it's about. I don't know if I got my kids in the water, but maybe I got a little closer to the shore. I don't know. And I have hope because I was sitting at my desk grading papers at the end of the year, right? Sitting at my desk, the door's over there, and a kid walks in, a kid who had driven me crazy all year. His name was Algernon, and he made me nuts. He drove me crazy the whole year, but I stayed with it. I never gave up on him. But he came in, and he stood at the door, and he said, hey, Mr. Danza, I quoted you today. I said, you quoted me? I said, what'd you say? He says, I told my friend, make the best of a bad situation. Thank you very much, everybody.
The Venn diagram killed. The Venn diagram killed.
Oh. Thank you.
So Mr. Danza wanted to give a speech rather than be interviewed, and I think we made the right decision letting him do that, right? But I do want to take this opportunity to interview the gentleman, Mr. David Cohn, who worked with him for the year in Northeast High School. And was he as energetic and passionate in the classroom as he was with us just now?
I'm glad everyone witnessed what I saw every day for a full year.
Really?
6:30 every morning. That was the beginning of my day. Tony's a morning person. I am not. He would come in. We were just talking about this. You don't remember this, but he came in one morning, and my jacket wasn't even off yet. And he had talked about the New York Times that he had read, this lesson, Miss Carroll coming on the field trip. I hadn't even taken my jacket off, and then he left. It just wasn't about. He just left, and I lost it. And the cameras are there, and and I think I was drooling at one point from laughing so hard, and he started pulling kids out of the hallway, and he's like, "Look at Mr. Cohn, see how funny I am? Look what I did to the guy." So yeah, I'm glad he lost that page because that's vintage Tony. I mean that's.
How did that happen?
I think he planned it, but
I mean, how did it work? Were you both in the classroom together, or did you?
Yeah, so it wasn't a co-teaching situation. He didn't want a co-teaching. He wanted this gig for himself.
He doesn't seem like the retiring type, no.
No. Yeah, no. And so he wasn't certified. So I sat in the back of the classroom every day and I made weird facial expressions based on what was going on. And I was there to support. And then one day he threw me a line. And do you remember the day that you reeled me in?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, what happened was I got stumped. You're stumped half the time. You don't know what you're talking. I had a kid tell me, no, that's wrong. And he was right. But one time, because at first I was really, I wanted this teaching job. I didn't want training wheels. I wanted to do this. And they said, well, you can do this if you have this teacher sit in the background and back and watch you. And I was sort of against that. And I didn't like it. And then one day I was stumped and I went, "What do you think, Mr. Cohen?"
And I don't think I was paying a lot of attention at the time, but I think I came through. And,
you did.
And then but it was still his class.
What really, and this is really important. I think this is important. David was for me what I think should be a model for all first-year teachers. You get thrown in there. I turned around and looked at those kids, and I didn't know what to do. I was supposed to say this. My opening line was, "Hello, I'm Mr. Danza." Turn to the class and say, "I'm here to be your English teacher." I couldn't get it out. I'm gonna be. I think it's. I'm gonna be. And somebody had to smack me to get it going, but. He was there every day, and every day after we finished, I would go to his office and we would have a post-mortem, and we would talk about, a lot of times it was, and we would talk about what I did wrong, what I did right, what I didn't do, what I could. A lot of times, basically, his advice was talk less. Talk less. I'll tell you, wait.
It paid off. It paid off.
Huh?
I said it paid off.
Yeah. Here's what he did to me, though. One day, this is true. True story. So I'm killing myself. I got a great lesson plan. I'm going to knock him dead today. This is it. And so it's not going well. And there's a kid in the front. His name's Eric Choi. And Eric's an Asian kid. He's really flexible. He could sit in his desk and put his head on the floor. It was the craziest thing. And he was, and he was tough then. He was a tough kid, and he had a lot of trouble with his parents, they were very, very, very strict with him and demanding, and he was under a lot of pressure all the time. So I was teaching, and I glanced over. I was going like crazy. I glanced over, And I thought I was doing well. I glanced over, and he was making origami. And it was, wait a minute, it was the most intricate origami you've ever seen. It had moving parts. So I went over, and I was crushed. You know, I just was crushed. It was like somebody stabbed me. I was like, how, you know, I went and I took it from him, you know, and I actually even went out like to, and I took it, and I went afterwards, I went to the class, I was destroyed. And I went to meet him in his office, and you know, he'd sit at his desk, and I'd sit at my chair.
No, you stood. You stood.
No, this.
You were sitting that time?
I was sitting right there next to you, and we'd sit,
right.
and we would talk about the day, and it went well. It was just like any other meeting that we had, and then he says to me, "You okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm okay." And the great thing about being a teacher, as you know, is that you have a bad day. You got that next day, you go in there again, you do some push-ups and go in. You know, I'll get them today. You know, so I was like that. All right, tomorrow's another day, and I went to get up. I just went like this, and I got to about here, and he said, "Did you cry yet?" And I'm telling you, I can cry now. I swear, I went like this. No, yeah, but and I started to cry, and I mean sob. And I ran like a dope. I ran out of the office and out into the hallway, and it was loaded with teachers and students. And I was literally sobbing. I couldn't stop, right? I couldn't stop.
Yeah, it was my first time trying to console a man like that.
And you know what bothered me most of all? And I know this happened. I saw teachers look at me, crying, just in despair, and I knew they were going, huh, now you know, huh?
David.
Yeah.
What, as an experienced teacher, what kind of advice did you give Tony going in? I mean, what did you emphasize to him?
I mean, the first conversation, you were in California, and it was just over the phone about how do you plan a lesson? So it was just, you know, what are the components of a lesson and what goes into it? And I was the one who talked about the engagement piece and how to get them engaged, which he did. And so it was really instructional coaching 101, just starting from the very beginning. How do you plan a lesson? And then from there, and then you came into my office, and we started planning the first couple weeks, and then it just kind of rolled from there. And
then he started letting me go, and little by little, he released me, and I had to come up with it myself. And you had to submit, you know, you got to submit every day. And but it was, but we were a good team, and this is the model. Every first-year teacher should have somebody they can go to. I mean, it makes a lot of sense.
And I'll say two things. And just to kind of echo that a little bit, you know, I was on the plane flying in today, and I was trying to explain what an instructional coach is for the umpteenth time. I want our country to get to the point where everyone knows what an instructional coach is, and where I don't need to define anymore, because it's starting to gain some momentum, and it's in, I think, almost every state in the country now. But I agree. I mean, I think it's such an integral part, not just for first-year teachers, but for veteran teachers as well. The other thing
what is the definition?
Give me one sec. The other thing that you asked was advice that I gave him. And I think the one thing that stuck with you about halfway or 3/4 through the year was do more with less. Right. And he was trying to cram so much into his lesson plans that it was just all over the place. So I think he really began to focus in on one thing for the day and going, you know, we hear with Common Core, you know, go deeper instead of wider. And I think that's what he started to accomplish halfway, 3/4 of the way through the year. Instructional coaching is someone who provides, I think support is the biggest word. You have an experienced teacher who provides support for not only first-year teachers, but for veteran teachers as well. You know, it's akin to you know, a new doctor going into surgery or profession without having some sort of support there. I mean, we wouldn't let a doctor go in without an experienced person there, and I think that's what an instructional coach is. I think that in terms of sustainability and for keeping teachers in the profession longer, they help with burnout, they co-plan lessons, they co-teach lessons, they model strategies. You guys know what it is, right? So.
I was asking for myself.
Oh yeah. So.
What was it, how did the kids react to having, you know, a TV star? Or
they didn't know who he was.
You know
yeah, they didn't. Yeah.
I'm telling you, one kid said, "I think my mother's a fan."
Right.
And I was happy it wasn't his grandmother, you know.
Yeah, no, they, even when the camera's on, they were kids. They were themselves. They were no different than they would have been without the cameras there. I think.
And then the cameras only lasted. The cameras were only there for the first, the first semester in any case.
Right. And I think you were fine with that.
Yeah, no, I was so happy they were gone. Well, we were fighting all the time anyway because they wanted to gin it up a little bit, and we didn't want to do that.
Right. And I think, you talked about the ratings piece. For me, I think one of the reasons it didn't get those ratings is it was a reality show. You and I talked really early on. I think it was the first weekend where we said, I remember after this was awful. After one of your early lessons, the producer came up to me and really wanted to kind of rip into you. So they sort of scripted, and I was new to this, so I went along with it. And so we were walking down the hall, and another producer, do you remember this?
Yes.
He was behind the camera making like a stabbing motion. He wanted me to really rip into Tony and to basically say, you're doing it, this is an injustice to the kids. And as an instructional coach, that's the last thing you would do. And so Tony and I talked that weekend, and we said, listen, let's not worry about ratings. We're not doing that. I'm gonna be a boring instructional coach, and you're gonna be an engaging teacher, and we'll see what happens.
Well, that's the danger. The instinct is they want to gin it up. They want to get ratings. We would do things, and like I did this great. It was unbelievable. It was a scavenger hunt to learn mice and men. It was a mice and men scavenger hunt.
Was that the one where he passed out at the end?
No, that was another one. I almost lost a kid. Oh, that was scary. But they had to buck barley. They had to identify characters and stuff. And they ran all over the school. It was unbelievable. And the kids really did. It was incredible. And when they were filming it, and he said to me, "Oh, we don't got anything." I said, "What do you mean we don't have anything? That was great. The kids had a great time. What kind of more excitement do you want than seeing kids do this? What's the matter with you?" But that's TV. What do you want from me? Like I said, it's very hard to do a reality show about a teacher. It just really is.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say they're cueing you to wrap up.
Oh.
That's...
Hey, when I said he's an instructional coach, I'm not kidding.
Okay. All right. So, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for that passionate speech.
Yeah.
Anyone who would like Tony to sign his book, which sounds like something worth reading, is invited to line up afterwards. And here, why don't you read and present this nice award.
I just want to say that David is not only, he was there for me, he gave me encouragement to keep trying, even when I was really desperate. He gave me solace at times, and he's a great guy and a great educator, and I couldn't have done it without him. He's my friend, and I'm so happy to present you with this, David.
Thanks, Am I doing the whole photo thing?
Let's have a big hand for all of our guests today.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, let me get my spoon. Hey. No.
Thank you all for coming and for hearing from all of our guests about making a difference. And I'm sure you'll all go out and make a difference in your children's lives in the future. Thank you so much.